Most people think the deadliest job in the ancient world was being a soldier. They picture battlefields covered in dust, arrows falling from the sky, and warriors charging into certain death. But they would be wrong. There was another profession where death wasn't a possibility. It was part of the job description. The people who accepted it knew that one mistake, 1 second of hesitation, could end their lives in front of thousands of spectators. Even worse, the crowd expected it. These men weren't kings. They weren't generals. Many weren't even free. They were Roman gladiators. Yet the most surprising part of their story isn't how they fought. It's why they kept walking into the arena. At sunrise, Rome was already awake. Merchants filled the streets. Bakers fired their ovens. Politicians argued in public squares. But beneath massive stone arenas, another world existed. Dark tunnels echoed with chains, nervous footsteps, and controlled breathing. The smell of sweat mixed with blood that had seeped into the sand the day before. Some men sharpened swords, others whispered prayers. A few simply stared at the floor, trying not to think about what waited above them. For many, this wasn't just another fight. It could be their last morning alive. Most gladiators didn't volunteer. Many were prisoners of war captured after Rome conquered foreign lands. Others were convicted criminals. Some were enslaved people forced into combat for someone else's profit. The moment they entered a gladiator school, their old lives disappeared. Instructors cared about only one thing. Could this person survive long enough to entertain the crowd? Training was brutal. Wooden practice swords felt heavier than real ones. Hours of drills continued until muscles failed. Injuries were ignored. Weakness wasn't corrected. It was punished. Every scar became another lesson. Every mistake could become tomorrow's funeral. Despite what movies often show, gladiator fights weren't random brawls. They were carefully organized spectacles. Different gladiators used different fighting styles. A heavily armored fighter might face a faster opponent carrying only a net and trident. The audience loved the contrast. Strength versus speed. Armor versus agility, power versus precision. Each matchup was designed to create suspense from the very first strike. No one knew who would leave the arena alive. Sometimes, not even the fighters. The arena itself was a psychological weapon. Thousands of people surrounded the combatants. The roar of the crowd never stopped. Some screamed for mercy. Others demanded blood. Every movement was watched. Every mistake triggered cheers from somewhere in the audience. Imagine trying to survive while 50,000 strangers judged every decision you made. The pressure alone was enough to break many men before the battle truly began. Then came the gates. Heavy wooden doors creaked open. Sunlight flooded the sand. The noise became deafening. Across the arena stood another man. He looked just as frightened, just as exhausted, just as desperate to survive. Only one thing separated them. Both couldn't afford to lose. The fight rarely lasted as long as modern movies suggest. Real combat was exhausting. Heavy armor trapped heat. Shields became harder to lift with every passing minute. Even experienced gladiators struggled to keep their balance after repeated attacks. One slip, one missed block, one poorly timed step. That was often enough. Steel moved faster than regret. Popular culture tells us defeated gladiators were always killed. History paints a different picture. Training a skilled gladiator required years of work and enormous expense. Owners didn't want valuable fighters dying after every match. victorious or defeated. Experienced gladiators were often spared if they had fought bravely. The crowd could influence the decision. So could the event organizer. Courage sometimes mattered as much as victory, but sometimes wasn't a promise. It was hope. Death didn't always come from another gladiator. Wild animal hunts were equally terrifying. Lions from Africa, leopards, bears, even elephants appeared in Roman arenas. Hunters faced creatures that had no rules, no strategy, and no mercy. If a lion charged unexpectedly, there was no referee, only survival. Some arenas became engineering marvels. Hidden elevators lifted animals through trapdoors. Underground tunnels allowed surprise entrances. Special effects amazed spectators centuries before modern theaters existed. For the audience, it was entertainment. For the people below the arena, it was a machine built to manufacture fear. Yet something remarkable happened. A handful of gladiators became celebrities. Crowds admired them. Women wrote about them. Successful fighters earned prize money and fame. Their names spread across the empire. Some even gained freedom after years of victories. Imagine surviving enough battles that the same crowd which once hoped to see you die now cheered your arrival. It was one of history's strangest paths to glory. One man became more famous than all the others. Spartacus. Originally enslaved, he escaped gladiator training with dozens of companions. That small escape turned into one of the greatest slave rebellions Rome had ever faced. For nearly 2 years, Roman armies struggled to crush the uprising. Although Spartacus was eventually defeated, his story transformed the image of gladiators forever. Not just entertainers, not just fighters, symbols of resistance. Still, most gladiators never became legends. Most died anonymously. No statues, no triumphs, no celebrations. Only names scratched onto forgotten gravestones. Some were barely adults. Others survived dozens of battles before fate finally caught them. Every time they entered the arena, they gambled with the only thing they truly owned: their lives. So, was being a gladiator really the deadliest job in the ancient world? Not necessarily. Some miners, sailors, and quarry workers may have faced even higher death rates over time. But few occupations demanded that people walk into a stadium where thousands gathered to watch them risk everything for entertainment. That combination of violence, public spectacle, relentless pressure, and uncertainty made gladiatorial combat unlike anything else in history. The arena wasn't simply a place where people fought. It was where courage was sold, fear became entertainment, and survival itself became a performance. Long after the cheers faded and the sand covered the blood, one truth remained. For Rome, the games ended when the crowd went home. For the gladiators, every sunrise could be their final one.